What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the FF Ballbusters podcast. Thank you for joining us. My name is Eric. That's my co-host, Will. And today we're going to be getting into something a little bit different. We're going to be talking a CBS NFL mock draft today with landing spots. And so we're kind of going to get into how our pre-draft rankings, our rankings without landing spots, change once we see where these guys end up. So that should be fun. But before we get into it, Will, do you have anything to say to the people?
Absolutely. You guys been doing a great job hitting that subscribe button. We appreciate all the love we've been getting on the channel. We've been hitting our most growth lately, so we appreciate that. And let's keep it going. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. That way you know when we drop all of our newest videos. And hit us up in the comments below about anything that you agree with or disagree with. This should be a pretty exciting video because we have at least some landing spots to work with here and some situations and scenarios. So hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and join us for more down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you guys, want to just talk about your favorite teams and who they get, also let us know in that category. I'm sure we're going to do more of these too, as draft season gets closer. So that'll definitely be interesting to see how things shake out. Real quickly, before we get into it still, I think, doing these mock drafts is a really good exercise for us and for you guys to do what I talked about at the top, to wrap our head around how much these landing spots impact our player rankings and like talent versus situation, the kind of age-old debate. I think going through multiple mock drafts like this is a good way to weigh those two and like how much they matter, especially positionally, once we get into mock drafts that are more than one round. But today it's just going to be the first round. And at the very top of this one, maybe a shock to some, a little bit of a shock to me, we have Drake May in the number one spot, being taken by Chicago via the Carolina Panthers. What do you think about this one, Will?
So this one right here, we've been seeing a lot of discourse lately about Drake May possibly being the QB1. A lot of doubt has been getting kind of thrown over Caleb Williams. So seeing him at this number one spot isn't super confusing. Also, Justin Fields hasn't been very inspiring this year, so I could see the Bears moving on to a different quarterback. And with Drake May coming to this spot, obviously we've seen, Justin Fields have those sparks of, great play. Whether that's due to his athleticism or not, we don't know, but at the same time, Drake May is also a pretty athletic quarterback himself, also great at playing within structure. I feel like, maybe the Bears have to retool their coaching situation a little bit better for this to be a really, really great landing spot. But in terms of the fact he'd be landing here, he'd have DJ Moore immediately, Cole Kmet, who's been on the rise, and just a lot of other young guys on the team as well. Roshan Johnson in the backfield also progressing through. I think it could be a good situation for Drake May, but is it the best situation in the world? I'm not going to sit here and act like it's not the Bears. It still is the Bears at the end of the day. So it's not amazing, but it is still a good landing spot for Drake May.
Yeah, I think you made a good point, especially about the coaching staff. I have my doubts and my questions about Eberflus and also Getsy as the offensive coordinator. I do wonder how long those guys stick around. Eberflus, this is his first year. Getsy has been there for 2 or 3 now. I'm not exactly sure what the timeline is with him, but we'll see if he sticks around. I do think they'd need to add a little bit more help. The only receivers that are going to be under contract next year would be DJ Moore, Tyler Scott, and Velus Jones. Mm-hmm. Not the most inspiring group, but DJ Moore, definitely the headliner there, would be helpful. Does this change anything for you in terms of your ranking, seeing him go with the 101? Because for me, he's still my QB2.
Yeah, he would still be my QB2. I don't think this landing spot is enough to really give him that boost over Caleb Williams, really, as a QB1. But I do think it is still a good spot for him to still be the QB2.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so that would be pretty interesting if we got the little shake up there at the 101. But not long after, at the 102, the New York Giants do select Caleb Williams. What do you think about this landing spot in comparison to the one in Chicago?
As a Commanders fan, this one depresses me a little bit, but, as a football fan, we've seen Daniel Jones find at least some level of fantasy success within this offense, obviously by using his legs more so than throwing the ball. Caleb Williams is supposed to be a much better thrower of the ball than Daniel Jones, I could say confidently. So I think this is a good landing spot for him. The one thing I would like to see New York do is build around him a little bit more. The receiver room over there is kind of crazy looking when you look at it on paper. Not even kind of, it is crazy looking. And as far as the backfield, Saquon Barkley's about as solid as they come. He's going to be there for the future, I believe. But Caleb Williams being there, I do believe he could find some success with this offense if they build around him properly. But in terms of landing spots, I do feel like there's a lot that would be on both him and Saquon's shoulders in terms of, short-term production and who's got to carry this team at least until they do build around him. So it is a great landing spot, but I feel like he's going to be still playing a lot of hero ball. But we've seen that in college too, and it's been fun to watch. So it should be good for fantasy.
Yeah, he's used to it. That's for sure. No, I'd be very happy with this landing spot. I would love the idea of Caleb getting to play under Brian Daboll. As bad as the Giants have been as of late, I'm still confident that Daboll is a really good coach and a innovative offensive mind that would put Williams in the best position to succeed and get the best out of him. Obviously, like you mentioned, the wide receiver room would need some help. There's a lot of young guys there still. I think the only receivers that would be under contract that are of note would be Jalen Hyatt, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Darius Slayton. So no clear wide receiver one there. They would need to get an alpha for him at some point. But yeah, I like the landing spot, and for me, he would still be the clear QB1.
Absolutely agree with that, 100%.
All right, and then this one is exciting and a little scary at the same time. Marvin Harrison Jr. being taken all the way up at the 103 by the New England Patriots, of all teams. This would make him the highest drafted wide receiver since Calvin Johnson in 2007.
Yeah.
So in terms of draft capital, this is amazing. But what do you think about him going to the Patriots?
So it's funny. I saw a quote yesterday that was Marvin Harrison. He was saying that he didn't want to be remembered for his football play. He wanted to be remembered for how nice he was to everyone and that he said hi to everyone. And I feel like if he goes to the Patriots with the situation they've got right now, that's all he's going to really be known for at the moment. Now, with that being said, there is a little bit of positivity going forward. There's a lot of talk that Bill Belichick may not be in town next year. So who knows what this Patriots team is going to look like going forward in the future in terms of philosophy. But when it comes to Marvin Harrison and just this situation itself, he steps in immediately as an alpha wide receiver. He is the number one there. The only problem is who's going to be getting on the ball. Mac Jones has not been inspiring. Bailey Zappi, he's Bailey Zappi. So it's tough, but at the same time, I still believe in Marvin Harrison Jr. and him as a talent. But it is really, really, really getting difficult to buy in on him as the wide receiver one if this is the landing spot for him, I will say.
Yeah, so I'll say from the top, he would still be my wide receiver one just because he's generational. He's different.
Absolutely.
It's not close. There's a tier gap talent-wise between him and the rest of this class.
Absolutely.
But you make a ton of really good points. This is far from the ideal landing spot. We don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be like. We've heard reports recently that Mac Jones has lost the locker room. Bailey Zappi's not any better. Malik Cunningham, hopefully we get to see him kind of try out for this, but I don't have high hopes that he's like the future of the franchise at the position. So that's definitely something that's up in the air, something that the team is going to have to take care of. You mentioned, Marvin Harrison would be the wide receiver one on most teams, but easily this is the most ascendable wide receiver depth chart in the NFL.
Absolutely.
He would supplant everyone from the jump. And then the coaching staff is also very interesting. I don't want to disrespect Bill Belichick, probably the greatest coach of all time, but at this point it does kind of seem like the new age NFL has passed him by, at least on the offensive side of the ball and in the team building area where he kind of fills the role of GM as well. He hasn't drafted well. Clearly the roster is deficient. The offense has been inept. His coaching staff decisions for the offense have been weird and bad. Defensively they've been fine, but yeah, we'll have to see if he sticks around, how the coaching staff changes as well. There would be question marks, but as of now, he would definitely still be the wide receiver one.
Absolutely. Talent-wise, you still got to buy in. It's just the situation may be a little bit weird, or it could be the best thing in the world for him. Who knows, honestly.
Who knows? Yeah. All right, so then we got to scroll down a little bit, down to pick number 8 in the first round, where we see Brock Bowers, taken by the Tennessee Titans. He would be only the 6th tight end in the last 20 years to be drafted inside the top 10. So some rare air there, some very high draft capital for a tight end. What do you think about him going to Tennessee?
I like the landing spot because I feel like there's going to be a lot of room for him in terms of volume. In terms of who's going to be there with the team next year. DeAndre Hopkins signed a 1 year this year, didn't he? He signed a oneer?
I think it's a 2 year, but there's a team option to get out if they so choose.
Okay, gotcha. And who knows what they're going to do with that going into next year with the way this team's going. And if they're buying in on youth and having Brock Bowers there with Will Levis to grow alongside him, I believe that's just one of the best decisions they could make team building wise. They've already got Treylon Burks there as a young wide receiver who's ascending. Obviously, he's having a rough year, so who knows how that's going to pan out. But At the very least, Brock Bowers is probably going to step in and have immediate volume in this offense, at least number one or number two volume in this offense, probably in terms of throwing the ball. They don't throw the ball a lot in Tennessee, but they do make the most of it when they do, I feel like. And Will Levis has been impressive, honestly, as of late. We didn't buy in on the prospect a whole lot through the process, but he has played a little bit better than we expected. Obviously, the last couple of weeks have been a bit of a struggle for him, but that first game back, we saw at least flashes of what Will Levis could be, and with the Brock Bowers as a weapon, I'd love to see what this offense could do. He is obviously still the tight end one for me for this spot, just off of talent alone. I believe he's the only tight end that goes in the first round in this mock draft. Spoiler alert, if you guys are surprised about that. But I do still buy in on Brock Bowers here, and I still believe he is the tight end one.
Yeah, there's no question about that. Really, regardless of landing spot. Jatavian Sanders and Jaheim Bell, they're not close enough to him for landing spot to make a difference. But yeah, there's some question marks about the team in general, but I think you make a really good point that he would be, even if D-Hop comes back, it's really him and nobody else. Traylon Burks hasn't really proven anything to me to where he's going to be commanding volume over Bowers.
Yeah.
Chigo Okonkwo, it's been a fun ride, but he's clearly not the go-to guy there. So yeah, Brock Bowers would slide in immediately, get plenty of volume. We'll see what we get out of Levis. You made a good point. Like, the debut was great, but I hope to see more from him, especially in that Tampa Bay game where we saw C.J. Stroud completely light them up.
C.J. Stroud's different.
Susceptible. Oh, he's definitely different. I'm not comparing the two necessarily, but like Tampa Bay is a susceptible secondary, and they had a bunch of injuries in the secondary for that game, and he still couldn't really get anything done.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see what Levis can do. But I would love this landing spot. I would love the draft capital. And yeah, zero question about him being the tight end one. And then we don't have to scroll far. The next pick, this is one that is really interesting to me. J.J. McCarthy gets taken at the 9th overall pick by the Atlanta Falcons. I think this might be the perfect landing spot for him. What do you think about it?
Nah, it's just the description over here. I know it's blocked off a little bit by us because I'm trying not to spoil any future picks, but it says that he has a lot of experience making key plays on a run-heavy team, which obviously is perfect for Arthur Smith. He loves not giving the ball to his weapons. So having J.J. McCarthy there would be perfect for him. Just a guy who can get it done, who can be efficient, and obviously he isn't going to be a diva himself. He is used to working within those situations, so I think this is a great landing spot in terms of fits. This is just about as perfect as they come. That just Michigan to this offense right here, it's almost a direct shift over, really. So I do like J.J. McCarthy in this spot. I just don't know how great it's going to be for fantasy because we haven't really seen any quarterback be great in this offense. But at the same time, J.J. McCarthy should be better than both Taylor Heineke and Desmond Ridder. And who did they have last year? Who did they have last year?
It was Ridder.
Ridder started last year, the year before last?
Oh,
Mariota. Yeah, better than all three of them. So
yeah, of course.
Yeah, this offense should at least take a step up. So maybe we can see what this Atlanta offense can really do with a competent quarterback back there. Maybe that's what's needed,
I would hope so. But yeah, the fit seems hand in glove. Run first team, great offensive line, talented skill positions. Sounds a lot like Michigan to me. So I think he's used to that. I think he could slide in well there. He's been my QB3 so far throughout the process. And I think with this landing spot and this draft capital, he would stay there. I think, yes, they're probably not going to be super high pass volumes. So we don't know exactly what it's going to mean or how it's going to translate to fantasy production. But I'm still not going to move him down, although we can kind of discuss that here in a couple picks with another quarterback coming off the board.
Yeah, see, I'm somewhere in the mix. I feel like, Caleb Williams and then Drake May, and I feel like there's these next three guys are sort of in a similar tier for me in terms of how they're going to do for me. So they're kind of interchangeable for me in this spot. So it's almost like a 3A, 3B, 3C situation.
I can completely understand that, and they're much closer together for me than those top two for sure. But yeah, so let's get into that discussion here. At the 111, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Jaden Daniels. Been incredibly impressed with how he's looked, especially these past couple weeks. The whole season's been great, but he's been on a Heisman-type tear these past couple games. I've moved him up my rankings recently, but we can talk more about that after we go through how we feel about the landing spot.
Absolutely. And with this landing spot, I feel like it's a good one. Obviously, I don't know if the Buccaneers are rebuilding. It's a weird kind of roster they have constructed over there of old and young guys, but at the same time, they've got talent on the roster. And, Mike Evans coming up on being a free agent this year, but me and Eric kind of had this discussion yesterday, and we feel like he's going to be a lifelong Buck. So we hope that they're going to bring him back. Who knows? Well, keep an eye on it. But having Mike Evans as your quarterback, as your wide receiver, as a first-year quarterback would be great. Having Chris Godwin there also would be amazing. Rashad White's been doing well in the receiving game. So, and Jaden Daniels himself playing through has showed that he can play at a high level against high-level competition, especially in the SEC. Obviously, he's doing everything he's supposed to do. He's sustaining two receivers who are working at a historic pace right now for LSU in terms of Brian Thomas, and Malik Neighbors. And when it comes to Jaden Daniels himself, this year he has kind of been the dual threat quarterback in college. He's been the guy who's been out there getting it done both through the air and on the ground. So I kind of love everything that comes with Jaden Daniels in this package. And with this team, I feel like he's got some great weapons around him as well. And a team that is willing to throw the ball a good amount as well, as we've seen with Baker Mayfield this year and in prior years. So with Tom Brady, obviously, but that's one of the greatest of all time. So they have been throwing the ball still a good amount with Baker, which is what I wanted to see. And if they continue that with Jaden Daniels and he's still running the ball as well, super high ceiling.
Absolutely. I think Jaden Daniels has one of the kind of widest gaps in terms of potential ceiling and potential floor. Because if he runs the ball as dynamically as he has been in college, he's a fantasy cheat code. He's been, housing 70-yard runs and scoring touchdowns every single week with his legs and passing well through the air. If he has Evans and Godwin, they both stick around. That's a great group around him. The only position group that I have question about is the offensive line. They've struggled, and so we'd have to see how he would look behind a not as great offensive line, maybe a developing one if they choose to draft linemen in the next couple of years. But yeah, it's a tough eval because, Jaden Daniels is a fifth-year senior at this point. Struggled early on in his career and at Arizona State. And then he comes to LSU, has a rough start to his first year there at LSU and finishes it very strong, and then has this potentially Heisman-level fifth year there at LSU. I don't know what to buy into. The reason that I still have J.J. McCarthy as my QB3 is because he's a junior. He's played well in all of his given opportunities. You like to see that early production, whereas it took Jaden Daniels longer. But, what we're seeing from him on the field right now would be a great fantasy asset.
Yeah, and sometimes it does take some quarterbacks longer. Like Joe Burrow, it took him a while to actually really, really get going at LSU as well. Obviously, he was at Ohio State before I had to transfer, but still, we've seen some quarterbacks emerge late and still find success in the NFL. So it's not like it's a deal breaker or anything like that, but definitely something to keep an eye on for sure.
For sure. All right, so let's move on. Scroll down a couple picks here to pick 13. The Denver Broncos take his running mate, Jaden Daniels' running mate, Malik Neighbors at wide receiver. This is interesting. Definitely would still be my wide receiver too. Love the talent, and I think that the landing spot would be fine, mostly because I expect that if this is the case, one of Sutton or Judy gets moved. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think either, like you said, either one or both of them are probably going to be gone after this year. There've already been trade talks for Jerry Jeudy, getting him out of there. Cortland Sutton, not as much of trade talks, but still, I feel like that is someone that the team could move pretty soon. Marvin Mims hasn't really been getting an opportunity over there as a young guy, so I think they're trying to probably clear some space for him as well. But Malik Neighbors coming to this team is more optimistic than people would think. Russ has been having quietly a really good year compared to last year. He has been pretty good. The offense for Denver hasn't really been what's the problem in terms of them, not winning games or anything like that. It's been more of the defense. But having a Russell Wilson and being attached to him for the next 4 years? I believe his extension starts next year.
If they choose to keep him around
If they choose to keep him around.
I'm going to look into that to see if there's any potential outs.
Okay. Well, he looks into that. But having Russ for potentially the next few years could be a good thing for Malik Neighbors in terms of development. Obviously, he's great as a talent himself. He's been super productive at LSU. He's been on a historic pace, him and Brian Thomas. So it's great to see that he could land at a team with a not elite quarterback, but at least a good quarterback that can get the ball out there. But did you find anything for Russ in terms of his contract?
Yeah, so he's currently signed through 2028, his
Yeah.
age 40 season. So that would mean if Malik Neighbors were to come here, he would have 5 years with Russell Wilson. But there's a potential out prior to the 2026 season. So it could be 2 years if they choose to get out from underneath Russ.
Okay, so having Russ for at least the next 2 years, or wherever it is they have a quarterback back there. But in terms of Malik Neighbors as a receiver himself, I believe in the talent. I believe he's going to kind of do well no matter where it is he lands. So like Eric said, he's my wide receiver 2 still in terms of talent. But what do you feel about this landing spot right here?
I mean, it's not like the perfect smash spot in terms of landing spot, but I still like it. You know, the draft capital is great, getting picked at 13. And, you know, like we talked about, one of those wide receivers is going to move out of the way. And I think that shortly on into his rookie season, he probably turns into the wide receiver 1 there. So I don't mind it one bit. And yeah, Russ has been probably more than serviceable so far this season. I think he could definitely sustain Neighbors as a viable fantasy asset.
Absolutely agree.
All right, and then we go down 2 more picks to the 15th overall pick in the first round, and we have Rome Odunze coming off the board at wide receiver and going to the Indianapolis Colts. This one is definitely interesting to me. Love Odunze, the prospect. Coming into this, he was my wide receiver 3 in the class. I think you had it arranged a little bit differently. But based on the landing spot, what do you think about that, and does that change things for you?
So I think I had Rome Odunze at my wide receiver 4, I believe. So he was just slightly below wide receiver 3. And personally, I think he's going to stay there just because this landing spot is a little strange for me in terms of the Colts, because they have Michael Pittman, who is going to be a free agent next year. So this landing spot kind of depends on if Michael Pittman comes back for this to be a really good landing spot for me. Because as it stands right now, Michael Pittman and Josh Downs, I was about to say Josh Dobbs. Josh Downs are the 2 guys who are like the guys in that offense in terms of receiving. Could Rome Odunze be drafted there and also insert himself into that and also get volume in that? Absolutely. But I do wonder how much of that there is to go around with Jonathan Taylor getting his extension. So obviously they still want to run the ball a lot. You got Anthony Richardson, who himself runs the ball a lot. So it's tough. But at the same time, we've also seen them give Anthony Richardson 30 plus dropbacks. Yeah. So I want to say this is a good landing spot, and I think it is in terms of the team, who he's going to be with for the foreseeable future, and that team building itself up. Is this enough to move him up to wide receiver 3 for me, depending on, where the other people are drafted in this draft? Not for me personally. I think Rome Odunze would still stay at that wide receiver 4, but it's still a high wide receiver 4 for me, to be honest.
Yeah, this, it's not super disappointing, but I think it would move him down based on the next receiver that we see come off the board here in a second. I do wonder if this would indicate that the team moves on from Michael Pittman. We haven't really heard any rumblings about that. I'm not necessarily anticipating it, but it is his last year under contract with the team, so we'll have to see if there's an extension looming, and they have a really great wide receiver group of 3 guys with him, Odunze, and Downs, like you mentioned. But, I mean, for fantasy purposes, that would be a fairly crowded wide receiver room with a quarterback that I'm not going to say that they're going to be a low pass volume team, because like you mentioned, we've seen the team give Richardson the chance to drop back and pass the ball, but I wouldn't put them in the top 10 or the top half of the league necessarily in terms of pass volume. I think the fit quarterback to wide receiver would be good. Obviously, Odunze can be a good separator, which would be great for any quarterback, but he's also good in contested catch and jump ball situations. And I think Anthony Richardson, if they develop that trust, could use him in the red zone quite a bit. But yeah, I just wonder, with that many mouths to feed in probably a run-first offense, whether that would lead to fantasy success in the near future.
No, I absolutely agree. It's just, like you said, it's not enough pie, not enough pie.
Not enough pie. The age-old adage, just not enough pie, man.
Not enough pie.
But we kind of alluded to the next wide receiver here on the board. We go down to pick 17, where the Buffalo Bills select Keon Coleman. I want to hear your thoughts, because this one's pretty exciting for me.
So this is the one I was alluding to, like you said earlier, where this is my wide receiver 3. This is who I had on the list, wide receiver 3, and I still believe he could stay there. Obviously, things have been kind of turbulent in Buffalo right now. People are kind of pointing the finger at Josh Allen a little bit. Trayvon Diggs is tweeting a lot about Stephon, saying he needs to get out of there, whatever the hell that's going to mean. But the main thing that I'm looking at here is Gabe Davis is coming up on his free agency after this season. So if they were to pick up Keon Coleman, he would immediately slot in as the wide receiver 2 for this team. And personally, as a player, I feel like he's a lot more inspiring than Gabe Davis is. I think that he is someone who can command a lot more volume than Gabe Davis does. Something that we've had as a constant gripe towards Gabe Davis and why he doesn't get targeted as much as we feel like he could in this offense in terms of being a high-powered offense is because he doesn't separate well. He's not the best contested catch maker, so it really is kind of a weird. Those blow-up games for Gabe Davis are kind of weird, obviously. But Keon Coleman, he has all the tools in the toolbox to consistently win at the NFL level, at a high rate. I feel like contested catches are there. Obviously, you want his route running and stuff to be a little bit more polished. He's not the best separator in the world himself, but in terms of physical tools and having everything he needs to make catches and win out there in the NFL, I think Keon Coleman has it. So I think that he still stays in my wide receiver 3 spot right there.
Yeah, this is one where Keon Coleman moves up my list to that wide receiver 3 spot. Love the landing spot. There are some question marks with how things are going in Buffalo right now. I think Ken Dorsey was an unnecessary firing and probably a little bit of a scapegoat situation where they needed to blame somebody. Maybe Sean McDermott trying to save his job, but that's a conversation for a different day. I think, things are still going to be successful over there. And having Keon Coleman tied to Josh Allen for the foreseeable future is a wonderful pairing.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody that's willing to throw it down the field, throw it up in contested situations, and is good at making those passes. Keon is a massive upgrade over Gabe Davis, but I think can excel in a lot of the same areas of the game that Gabe Davis does. So I think it's a really good fit in this offense as well. So everything you said, completely agree with. And he would definitely be moving up my ranks if he falls to Buffalo.
Absolutely. And we don't have to go far for the next one either.
Yeah, next one here, the very next pick 18, the Cincinnati Bengals select another wide receiver here, Emeka Egbuka. Things definitely get interesting with my wide receiver rankings. We talked about Odunze falling a little bit. I'm still not sure with Egbuka going here to Cincinnati and another landing spot that I like a lot, where those two would rank compared to each other. What do you think about this landing spot and those two guys?
I think the situations are very similar in terms of both of them potentially entering very crowded wide receiver rooms. I feel like this one right here is going to be contingent on, T. Higgins staying with the team or not. If T. Higgins leaves and it's just Emeka Egbuka essentially and Jamar Chase, I think it's an amazing situation. I think he gets that slot role immediately as well, and he just immediately produces at the NFL level. I think if T. Higgins is there, it gets a little bit more complicated. But at the same time, I don't think his role really changes in the offense either. I think he's still that slot guy. He's not someone who consistently wins on the outside, so it's not like he would take T. Higgins' spot on the outside if T. Higgins were to come back. So it would be a situation where all three of them would sort of have to thrive in a fantasy situation if T. Higgins were to come back. But I feel like if T. Higgins is to leave in free agency, Emeka Egbuka could move up to that wide receiver 4 spot. But as it stands right now with not knowing where he goes, I think wide receiver 5/4A for him, or 4B, I think is a good spot for Emeka Egbuka here because the talent is there, obviously. He's one of the best route runners, if not the best route runner in this class. So, yeah, I think he's up there.
Yeah. Those are my thoughts exactly. I like the landing spot a lot, but it is contingent on what they do with these expiring contracts in both Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins. I expect, just based on the role that Egbuka would fill, that Tyler Boyd probably wouldn't be back. T. Higgins obviously is a totally different type of receiver. The team would like to bring him back, I would assume, but I don't know how, salary cap and stuff like that, how that's going to work out. We'll have to see. If they retain Chase, Higgins, and Egbuka, yes, crowded receiver room. Not sure what the ceiling would be in terms of fantasy value, but if Higgins leaves and it's Chase and Egbuka, things would get really exciting over there. I think Burrow would be a fantastic quarterback to pair with Egbuka, just an incredibly accurate quarterback in the short and intermediate area, and I think he could become a go-to receiver fairly quickly. And then again, same situation that we talked about with Keon and Josh Allen, just having your guy tied to one of the best quarterbacks in football for the foreseeable future is incredibly valuable as well.
Absolutely.
I think if Higgins left, I would consider putting him over Odunze. I like Odunze as the full package, being able to be that true X, and take over.
He can go all over the field, really. Yeah, he can be placed anywhere.
Exactly. And I guess I'm a little bit skittish off of total slot receivers after what we've seen from JSN. this season, but there's still a lot to be told in that story as well. I don't want to get ahead of myself there. But yeah, like the landing spot a lot for Egbuka. Then we got two more fantasy relevant picks here to talk about. We got to scroll down a little bit to pick 21, where the Minnesota Vikings select Bo Nix as the successor at quarterback. I have a few questions. First of which, is Nix better than Josh Dobbs?
With the way Josh Dobbs has been playing this year, I don't know.
Is Dobbs the truth?
He's making a really good case for himself for sure. He's really good at building rockets too, so it's tough to replace a guy like that. But
Facts.
But this
that's an essential part of a football team.
Exactly, you need those rockets out there. But with Bo Nix, this one is confusing, more so to say the least. One, I was surprised to see him in the first round a little bit. But at the same time, seeing him land with the Vikings was both exciting but also not exciting at the same time, Because if he lands with the Vikings, he's got everything he would need outside of a running back. You know what I mean? That team's got Justin Jefferson. He'd be tied to him for the foreseeable future. Jordan Addison's been playing really well. TJ Hawkinson just got his extension, so he's there for the foreseeable future as well.
Pretty good offensive line, too.
Yeah, pretty decent offensive line. It's just... The question I have here is Bo Nix actually good, or is he having a good season? Because we've seen him struggle up until this year, or really up until last year. He started to find his footing last year too. But it's like this thing even says here, suddenly smart decision making. I don't know. I don't know if that's him or if that's just, he's been in the system, he figured it out, blah, blah, blah. Is Bo Nix inspiring for you as a quarterback in this spot? And is this enough for him to move him around for you? Because I think I had him at like my QB5 spot around there. I think he kind of stays around there, but I don't think he's above any of the guys we've named earlier in this video.
He definitely moves up. This landing spot, aside from player evaluation, is fantastic.
Yeah.
I had him like in the 6-7 range of quarterbacks, and this would probably move him up to 5.
Okay.
It is a little bit surprising to see him go above Michael Penix in this spot. I think if Michael Penix Jr. went to Minnesota, that's like, that's Kirk Cousins. Like, he's just the same thing, and the offense continues as usual. Bo Nix has been impressive in this past season, but like you alluded to, this is what, his 6th year in college.
Bro's been in college forever, bro. He's been in college forever.
And prior to like the back half of last year and this year, it hasn't looked great. But yeah, I mean, landing spot it couldn't get better. It's fantastic. So he definitely moves up. I think I would put him probably at QB5 with this landing spot. But just question marks about him, the player, which we've kind of talked about in some of our previous videos anyway.
Absolutely agree. But I think it's like you said, that the landing spot is enough to bump him up there. You know what I mean? Where I had like a 3A, 3B, 3C. So he's definitely in that mix. But it's weird. It's really weird.
Yeah, definitely weird. All right, let's get on to the last fantasy relevant player selected in the first round here. We go all the way down to 31. Interesting to see that Kansas City didn't win the Super Bowl in this mock draft. But anyway.
Interesting.
They take Xavier Worthy out of Texas, another young wide receiver added to the mix in Kansas City. Does this one work out for you? What do you think about the landing spot?
This one's weird for me because Xavier Worthy is weird for me as a prospect. I feel like he really isn't great at a whole lot of things. I think he's just this year's Jalen Hyatt, to be honest with you. But I think he is better than Jalen Hyatt, to say that at least. But it's tough. We saw him absolutely perform in earlier years in his college career. It's kind of tapered off a little bit since then. But in terms of him landing here with the Chiefs, it's really hard to get excited about any wide receiver landing with the Chiefs unless they are like that sort of elite prospect. You know what I mean? But I don't think we've had that in a while. Rashee Rice has done well for this team in terms of being a volume guy, but he hasn't really been a big play guy for the Chiefs. Xavier Worthy has that room, and he has the skill set to have that kind of a role, to be the guy to open up the offense for them. You know what I mean? But he's not going to be a new Tyreek for this team. So it's not like it's a super exciting thing for me to see that he's going to the Kansas City Chiefs, but it's cool. It doesn't really bump him up much in my rankings, to be honest with you, unless I see a lot more out of him.
Yeah, where do you have him in your rankings right now in terms of wide receivers?
I think he was like the wide receiver 7 in my rankings. I think he's going to probably stay right around there, to be honest.
Yeah, obviously we don't have a second round in here, so we don't see where guys like Troy Franklin, Brian Thomas Jr., Devontae Walker go and stuff like that. That would definitely impact things, seeing where they land. I have him at wide receiver 8. I think I'm probably a little bit lower than consensus.
I have him at 8 as well. I just took a look.
Okay. Yeah, I just like. I don't want people to get too offended when I say this because he's definitely better. But like, how much different is he really than MVS? Like, in terms of role in the offense, like MVS is the speed, take the top off the defense guy, but he's certainly not a volume guy. He's just a wind sprinter. I think if they draft him in the first round, I would hope that he gets more volume and a little bit more work underneath. But you know, Rashee Rice has been looking decent. Obviously, Travis Kelce is going to be there for the next couple of years. I don't see where the volume comes from, and I haven't seen enough from him as a prospect for me to like trust that they're going to need to force feed him targets.
Yeah, me personally, I feel like this is one of the first like offensive player picks on this list that I've seen that I felt like isn't really super accurate, to be honest. I feel like there's other players that the Chiefs would probably prioritize in this situation over an Xavier Worthy because, like you said, MVS fills out a similar role, and what is he doing in that offense? Not much.
I mean, from an NFL perspective, I think MVS is definitely more important than from like a fantasy perspective.
Absolutely, like he's needed for a football team.
Stretching the field, yeah. And Xavier Worthy's definitely better. I want to make sure people realize, you know, I'm not saying he's MVS. He's definitely better than MVS, but similar role that he'd be filling. Yeah, I just, from a fantasy perspective, I wouldn't get as excited as I think most of the fantasy community would based on the fact that he's getting paired with Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that sentiment right there.
But that will round things out. Just in general, I guess we kind of covered it throughout the entire video. I was wondering if we needed to do a little wrap up of our rankings, but I think people get the gist as far as how things shook up based on our player evals and landing spot evals.
I have to say, I think we did a pretty good job of letting them know. But if you guys do want those updated rankings, at some point we are going to have a ranking sheet put together for you guys to access. So look forward to that in the future. That way you can see that. But we're getting that ready for the off season. But with that being said, like you said, I don't really feel like this shook up a ton in terms of how we view these players. But some players did get bumped up, like you said. So yeah. I think it's okay. I think we're good. I think we covered it. All right. So that was a fun little exercise that we did there. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Obviously, leave comments below about what you think of this mock draft, whether you think the landing spots were realistic, what you think of our evaluation of the landing spots and of these players. Let us know all that good stuff. Let's have a discussion in the comments. And then all the good stuff that Will mentioned at the top of the video. If you could continue that momentum that we've had going, we've really appreciated the support. Hit that like button if you enjoyed the content. Hit that sub button if you're interested in sticking around and seeing our videos down the line. Hit the notification bell for that as well so you can stay up to date and in the loop. But I think that's all I have. Will, do you have anything to say to the people? Absolutely. Hit up those links down in the comments below. You'll find a link to our Discord. You can join that community. We have a lot of people in there joining, talking fantasy football every day. So make sure you join that community, get you some advice, or just come and talk. You know, we're always in there chatting. So come through. Also, check out the other links to our sponsors over at Dynasty Owner and over at Do Numbers. I'm wearing one of the hoodies right now. Eric's also wearing one over there. Get you some merch. And with that being said, if you guys made it this far into the video, as always, we love you. And we'll catch you in the next one. Peace. Peace.